David Sterling stood in the garage for several long moments, staring at the diagnostic readouts on Maya's laptop screen. The silence stretched uncomfortably as he processed what he was seeing. Finally, he looked up at Maya with an expression that was equal parts surprise and calculation. "Show me exactly what you found," he said. His voice lacking its usual condescending tone, Maya walked David Sterling through her analysis, explaining how she had mapped the vehicle's communication networks and identified the electromagnetic interference pattern. She demonstrated the diagnostic software she had written, showed him the correlation between the battery, charger's installation and the beginning of electrical problems in luxury vehicles, and explained the technical reasons why modern cars were more susceptible to this type of interference than older models. David Sterling listened intently, asking surprisingly detailed questions about the diagnostic methods and the potential solutions Maya had proposed. As the explanation continued, his demeanor gradually shifted from skepticism to genuine interest. "This diagnostic software," he said, pointing to Maya's laptop. "You developed this yourself?" "Yes, sir. I started with open-source automotive diagnostic tools and modified them to monitor network communication patterns in real time. Most standard diagnostic equipment focuses on individual system errors, but I wanted something that could analyze the interactions between different systems." David Sterling nodded slowly, his business-oriented mind clearly working through the implications. "Do you realize what you've created here? This kind of diagnostic capability could revolutionize how we approach electrical problems in modern vehicles. Every luxury car dealership and high-end repair shop would want access to this technology." Maya felt a surge of excitement mixed with apprehension. She had been focused on solving the immediate problem with the Bentley, but she was beginning to understand that her solution had much broader applications. "I hadn't really thought about it that way," Maya admitted. "I was just trying to help my dad fix a difficult car." "Maya," Jerome said quietly, "what you've done here is bigger than one car repair. You've identified a systematic problem that's probably affecting repair shops all over the country. Shops that are installing similar battery chargers without realizing they're creating interference problems." David Sterling was clearly having similar thoughts. "Williams, I owe you both an apology. Yesterday I was concerned about professional appearances and liability issues, but what I should have been focused on was problem-solving capability. Your daughter just demonstrated more diagnostic innovation than most of my certified technicians show in a year." Maya felt a warm glow of vindication, but she was careful to keep her expression professional. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I appreciate that. More than an apology, though, I want to make you both a proposition." David Sterling's voice took on the tone of someone making a business deal. "Maya, how would you feel about working here part-time? Not as an apprentice or a helper, but as our specialist for complex electrical diagnostics. You'd be solving the kind of problems that stump traditional mechanics. And you'd be developing diagnostic techniques that could set Sterling Motors apart from every other repair shop in the city." The offer caught Maya completely off guard. Yesterday she had been told she wasn't welcome in the garage. Now she was being offered a job working on the most challenging repairs the shop encountered. "I'm still in school," Maya said carefully. "I couldn't work full-time." "I'm not asking for full-time," David Sterling replied. "I'm asking for your expertise when we encounter problems that require your kind of analytical approach. Think of it as consulting work. We get access to your diagnostic skills and your software, and you get real-world experience working on some of the most sophisticated vehicles in the world." Jerome looked at his daughter with pride and amazement. "Maya, this is an incredible opportunity. But the decision is entirely yours." Maya's mind was racing. The offer represented everything she had hoped for: recognition of her abilities, access to challenging technical problems, and the chance to prove that she belonged in the automotive world. But it also felt overwhelming. Just days ago she had been a teenager bringing lunch to her father. Now she was being offered a position as a diagnostic specialist. "Can I have some time to think about it?" Maya asked. "Of course," David Sterling said. "But while you're thinking, let me show you what we're dealing with in Bay 12. We have a Tesla Model S with an intermittent charging problem that's been puzzling our technicians for 2 weeks. Maybe you'd like to take a look at it just to get a sense of the kind of work you'd be doing here. Maya followed David Sterling and her father to Bay 12, where a sleek black Tesla sat connected to diagnostic equipment. The car's owner had reported that the vehicle would sometimes refuse to charge, displaying error messages that seemed to have no connection to any actual hardware problems. Traditional troubleshooting approaches had failed to identify any faulty components. Electric vehicles present a whole different set of diagnostic challenges, David Sterling explained. The integration between the charging system, battery management, and thermal control creates interdependencies that most technicians don't fully understand. Maya approached the Tesla with the same systematic thinking she had applied to the Bentley. She connected her laptop to the vehicle's diagnostic port and began analyzing the communication patterns between different system modules. Within minutes, she identified an interesting anomaly. The charging system is receiving conflicting information about battery temperature, Maya explained. The battery management system says the temperature is normal, but the thermal management system is reporting a sensor error. The charging system is programmed to be conservative, so it shuts down charging whenever it receives conflicting data about battery safety. Jerome peered over his daughter's shoulder at the diagnostic readouts. So it's another communication problem, but this time between systems within the car rather than interference from outside. Exactly. But here's the interesting part. The sensor error isn't real. The thermal management system is generating false error codes because of a software bug in its diagnostic routine. The actual temperature sensors are working perfectly. Maya spent the next hour analyzing the Tesla software architecture, tracing the source of the false error codes to a timing issue in the thermal management system's self-diagnostic routine. It was exactly the kind of problem that would be nearly impossible to identify using traditional automotive diagnostic approaches, but relatively straightforward to solve using network analysis techniques. I think I can fix this, Maya said finally. But it would require updating the thermal management system's firmware to correct the diagnostic timing issue. David Sterling looked impressed. You're talking about reprogramming the car's control systems. That's graduate-level automotive engineering work. It's really just applied computer science, Maya replied. Modern cars are computers that happen to have wheels. If you understand computer systems, you can understand automotive electronics. David Sterling made his decision. Maya, I don't want to wait for you to think about my offer. I'm prepared to make it official right now. Sterling Motors will hire you as our senior diagnostic specialist, part-time while you finish school, full-time afterward if you want. Your starting salary will be $50,000 a year, prorated for part-time hours, plus bonuses for solving particularly difficult problems. Maya felt dizzy. The salary David Sterling was offering was more than many full-time mechanics earned, and he was offering it to her for part-time work, while she was still in school. Jerome was staring at his daughter with wonder and pride. Maya, that's more than I make after 20 years in this business. Your daughter isn't just a mechanic, Williams, David Sterling said. She's an automotive systems engineer, and that's a much more valuable skill set in today's market. Traditional mechanical repairs are becoming commoditized, but diagnostic expertise for complex electronic systems is rare and extremely valuable. Maya looked around the garage that had been her second home for so many years, seeing it now from a completely different perspective. Yesterday, she had been an unwelcome visitor. Today, she was being offered a position as the shop's senior diagnostic specialist. The transformation was so dramatic that it felt almost surreal. I accept your offer, Mr. Sterling, Maya said, extending her hand. But I have one condition. I want to work closely with my father and the other experienced mechanics here. Electronic diagnostics is important, but so is mechanical expertise. The best solutions come from understanding both aspects of automotive repair. David Sterling shook Maya's hand with a genuine smile. I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think we should formalize that approach. I want to restructure our diagnostic procedures to combine traditional mechanical expertise with advanced electronic analysis. Sterling Motors is going to become the premier destination for luxury vehicle repairs, and that means staying ahead of the technological curve. Jerome watched his daughter shake hands with David Sterling, and his eyes filled with emotion. He had spent 20 years building his reputation as a skilled mechanic, and in one day his daughter had not only matched that accomplishment but exceeded it. More than that, she had found a way to honor the Maya Williams adjusted her worn baseball cap as she walked through the massive garage doors of Sterling Motors, the most prestigious auto repair shop in downtown Chicago. At 19, she had already spent countless hours learning everything her father could teach her about engines, transmissions, and the intricate dance of metal and oil that made vehicles come alive. Her father, Jerome Williams, had worked at Sterling Motors for over 20 years, earning respect as one of the finest mechanics the shop had ever seen. The familiar smell of motor oil and the symphony of clanking tools greeted Maya as she made her way through the garage. She carried a lunch bag for her father, who often forgot to eat when he was deep in concentration, working on particularly challenging repairs. The other mechanics nodded at her with friendly smiles. They had watched her grow up, seen her transform from a curious little girl asking endless questions about carburetors to a young woman who could diagnose engine problems by sound alone. Maya found her father hunched over the engine bay of a vintage Mustang, his weathered hands moving with practiced precision as he adjusted the timing belt. Jerome looked up when he heard her footsteps, his face breaking into a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "There's my girl," Jerome said, wiping his hands on an oil-stained rag. "You didn't have to bring me lunch again. I know you've got your own things to do." Maya handed him the paper bag containing his favorite sandwich from the deli down the street. "Dad, you know you'll work straight through dinner if someone doesn't remind you to eat. Besides, I like coming here. It feels like home." The garage truly did feel like home to Maya. She had spent countless afternoons after school sitting on toolboxes, watching her father work magic on engines that other mechanics had given up on. Jerome had a gift for understanding the mechanical heartbeat of any vehicle, and he had patiently passed that knowledge on to his daughter. Maya could remember being 12 years old, standing on a step stool so she could reach into an engine bay while her father guided her hands, teaching her to feel for the subtle vibrations that indicated a problem. "Mr. Williams," called a sharp voice from across the garage. Maya turned to see David Sterling approaching, his expensive suit looking out of place among the grease-stained work clothes of the mechanics. David had inherited Sterling Motors from his father just 2 years ago, and since then, he had made it clear that he valued profit margins over the craftsmanship that had built the shop's reputation. Jerome straightened up, his expression becoming more formal. "Yes, Mr. Sterling, what can I do for you?" David's eyes flicked dismissively over Maya before focusing on her father. "We need to talk about the Morrison account. That Bentley has been sitting in Bay 7 for 3 weeks now. The customer is getting impatient, and frankly, so am I. What's the holdup?" Maya watched her father's jaw tighten slightly. She knew about the Bentley. It had come in with what seemed like a simple electrical problem, but every attempt to fix it had led to new complications. The car's sophisticated computer systems were acting erratically, causing everything from the engine to misfire to the luxury features to malfunction randomly. "The Bentley is a complex machine, Mr. Sterling," Jerome explained patiently. "The electrical system is integrated with multiple computer modules, and there seems to be a cascading failure that's affecting multiple systems. I've been working through the diagnostic protocol systematically, but it's going to take time to isolate the root cause." David's expression grew cold. "Time is money, Williams. Mr. Morrison is one of our most important clients, and he's starting to make noise about taking his business elsewhere. I need that car fixed by the end of the week, or there are going to be consequences." Maya felt anger rising in her chest at David's tone, but she bit her tongue. She had learned from watching her father that sometimes the best response was dignified silence. Jerome simply nodded, his professional demeanor never wavering despite the disrespect in David's voice. "I understand your concerns. Mr. Sterling, I'll do everything I can to resolve the issue as quickly as possible while maintaining our quality standards. David turned to walk away, then paused and looked back at Maya with a condescending smile. Williams, maybe you should keep your family visits to after hours. This is a professional workplace, not a daycare center. The comment hit Maya like a physical blow. She had been coming to the garage since she was a child, and never once had anyone suggested she didn't belong there. Her father's face darkened, and several of the nearby mechanics stopped their work to look over at the exchange. My daughter knows more about engines than most of your customers know about their own cars, Jerome said quietly, his voice carrying a warning edge. She's not bothering anyone. David laughed dismissively. I'm sure she's very bright, but this is a place of business. We can't have teenagers hanging around, even if they are related to employees. Insurance liability and all that? Maya felt her cheeks burn with humiliation and anger. She wanted to defend herself, to tell David Sterling exactly what she thought of his arrogant attitude, but she also didn't want to make things harder for her father. Jerome needed this job, and they both knew that David Sterling was looking for any excuse to make changes to the shop's longtime staff. It's okay, Dad, Maya said softly, gathering her things. I should get going anyway. I've got some studying to do. Jerome looked at his daughter with eyes full of regret and frustration. Maya, you don't have to. Really? It's fine? Maya interrupted, forcing a smile. I'll see you at home for dinner. As Maya walked toward the exit, she heard David Sterling's voice carrying across the garage. And Williams, remember what I said about that Bentley? End of the week. No excuses. Maya stepped outside into the Chicago afternoon, the sounds of the city replacing the familiar mechanical symphony of the garage. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking back at the building where her father spent most of his waking hours, where she had learned to love the elegant complexity of automotive engineering. The encounter with David Sterling had left her feeling small and unwelcome in a place that had always been her sanctuary. But beneath the hurt and anger, something else was growing. Maya had inherited more than just her father's mechanical aptitude. She had also inherited his stubborn determination and his refusal to back down from a challenge. As she walked home through the busy streets, Maya found herself thinking about the Bentley in Bay 7. She had overheard her father talking to other mechanics about the car's mysterious problems. Multiple computer modules were failing in sequence, creating a cascade of malfunctions that seemed to have no logical pattern. Traditional diagnostic approaches weren't working because the problems kept shifting and evolving. Maya had always been fascinated by the newer VAICLES that combined traditional mechanical engineering with sophisticated computer systems. While her father was unquestionably skilled with conventional engines and transmissions, Maya had spent her free time learning about automotive electronics, computer programming, and the complex networks of sensors and processors that controlled modern luxury vehicles. That evening at dinner, Jerome was unusually quiet. Maya watched him push food around his plate, his mind clearly still at the shop, wrestling with the Bentley's problems. Tell me about the Bentley, Maya said finally. Jerome looked up, surprised. It's just a complicated electrical issue. Nothing for you to worry about. Dad, I've been learning about automotive computer systems for 2 years. Maybe I can help you think through the problem. What exactly is happening with the car? Jerome hesitated, then began to describe the Bentley's symptoms. The engine would run smoothly for minutes at a time, then suddenly develop a misfire that would clear up on its own. The navigation system would freeze randomly. The climate control would switch between heating and air conditioning without input, and the luxury seat adjustments would activate spontaneously. Most puzzling of all, the problems never occurred in the same sequence twice. As her father talked, Maya found herself visualizing the car's electronic architecture. Modern luxury vehicles were essentially computers on wheels, with dozens of interconnected modules communicating constantly through data networks. If something was disrupting those communications, it could cause exactly the kind of random, shifting problems her father was describing. Have you checked the network architecture? May asked. It sounds like there might be a communication protocol issue rather than a hardware failure. Jerome smiled for the first time all day. You know, I was so focused on chasing individual symptoms that I hadn't thought about the possibility of a network-wide communication problem. But how would you even diagnose something like that? Maya's mind was already racing ahead, thinking about diagnostic approaches that went beyond traditional mechanical troubleshooting. You'd need to monitor the data traffic between modules, look for patterns in the communication failures. It would require some specialized equipment and probably some custom programming. Equipment we don't have at the shop, Jerome said with a sigh. And even if we did, I wouldn't know how to use it properly. These new cars are getting too complicated for old mechanics like me. You're not old, Dad. You're experienced. And experience counts for a lot when you're trying to understand complex systems. Maybe we could figure out a way to combine, yo. Maya arrived at Sterling Motors early Saturday morning, carrying a laptop bag and a small toolkit she had assembled over the years. Her father was already there, having unlocked the garage and turned on the lights in Bay 7, where the problematic Bentley waited like a sleeping giant. The luxury sedan gleamed under the fluorescent lights, its polished exterior giving no hint of the electronic chaos hidden within. I brought some diagnostic software I've been working on, Maya said, setting down her laptop. It's designed to interface with automotive computer networks and monitor data traffic patterns. I wrote it as a project for my computer science class, but I think it might actually be useful here. Jerome raised his eyebrows. You wrote diagnostic software? When did you find time to do that? Maya smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and nervousness. Remember all those evenings when you thought I was just doing homework? I was actually studying automotive electronics and programming. I figured if I was going to be a mechanic like you, I needed to understand how modern cars actually work. Like me? Jerome's voice was soft with emotion. Maya, you don't have to follow in my footsteps. You're smart enough to do anything you want. You could be an engineer, a programmer, anything. I want to be a mechanic, Dad, but maybe a different kind of mechanic than the ones who came before. Someone who understands both the old mechanical systems and the new electronic ones. Cars are changing and mechanics need to change with them. Jerome nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. His daughter wasn't just interested in fixing cars. She was thinking about the future of automotive repair itself. All right, then. Show me what you've learned. Maya opened her laptop and connected it to the Bentley's diagnostic port. Her software began scanning the vehicle's network, mapping the connections between different computer modules. On her screen, a complex diagram appeared, showing dozens of interconnected systems, engine management, transmission control, brake systems, climate control, entertainment systems, and many others. Look at this, Maya said, pointing to her screen. A modern luxury car like this Bentley has over 50 different computer modules, and they're all constantly talking to each other. Engine speed affects transmission shifting, which affects brake regeneration, which affects battery charging, which affects electrical load, which affects engine performance. Everything is connected. Jerome leaned over his daughter's shoulder, studying the diagram. I knew these cars were complicated, but I had no idea they were this integrated. How do you even begin to troubleshoot something like this? Traditional diagnostic approaches look at each system individually, Maya explained. But if the problem is in the communication between systems, you have to look at the network as a whole. Let me run a communication analysis. Maya's fingers flew over the keyboard as she initiated a series of diagnostic routines. The software began monitoring data traffic between the various modules, looking for patterns, delays, or corrupted messages. Almost immediately, anomalies began appearing on the screen. There, Maya said, highlighting a section of the readout. Look at this communication pattern. The engine management module is sending normal data to the transmission controller, but there's a delay in the acknowledgement signal coming back. It's only a few milliseconds, but that's enough to cause the engine management system to think there's a problem. Jerome watched the data scrolling across the screen, beginning to understand what his daughter was seeing. So the engine management system compensates for what it thinks is a transmission problem, which causes an actual engine problem? Exactly. And then other systems detect the engine irregularity and start making their own adjustments, which creates a cascade of false problems throughout the network. It's like a rumor spreading through a group of people, getting more distorted each time it's passed along. Maya continued her analysis, tracing the communication delays through different parts of the network. The pattern that emerged was both elegant and troubling. The delays were random enough that they couldn't be caused by a simple hardware failure, but consistent enough that there had to be an underlying cause. "I think I know what's happening," Maya said after an hour of intensive analysis. "There's electromagnetic interference affecting the network communications. Something is generating electrical noise that's disrupting the data signals between modules." Jerome frowned. "But we checked all the electrical connections. Everything looked normal. The interference might not be coming from the car itself," Maya said thoughtfully. "It could be an external source that's affecting the network when the car is parked in this particular bay." Maya looked around Bay 7, studying the electrical equipment and tools scattered throughout the area. Her eyes settled on a large industrial battery charger that had been installed in the corner of the bay several months ago. The charger was designed to maintain the batteries of cars during long-term repairs, but Maya noticed that it was located very close to where the Bentley was parked. "Dad, when was that battery charger installed?" Jerome followed his daughter's gaze. "About 4 months ago. Mr. Sterling had it put in because he said we were taking too long on some of the luxury car repairs. He wanted us to be able to keep the batteries charged during extended diagnostic work." Maya pulled up the service records on her laptop, cross-referencing the dates. The first report of problems with the Bentley was 3 months ago. And look at this. Every luxury car that's been parked in Bay 7 since the charger was installed has had some kind of intermittent electrical issue. The pieces were falling into place. The industrial battery charger was generating electromagnetic interference that was disrupting the sensitive communication networks of modern luxury vehicles. The interference was subtle enough that it didn't cause obvious failures, but it was creating the kind of communication delays and corrupted data that led to cascading system problems. "So the car isn't broken," Jerome said slowly. "It's being broken by the equipment we're using to fix it." "That's exactly right. It's like trying to perform surgery in a room where someone is randomly bumping the operating table. The surgeon isn't doing anything wrong, but the external interference makes it impossible to work properly." Maya felt excitement building as she realized the implications of her discovery. This wasn't just about fixing one car. It was about understanding a systematic problem that was affecting multiple vehicles. If she was right, moving the Bentley to a different bay should resolve all of its mysterious problems. "Let's test the theory," Maya said. "Help me move the car to Bay 3 and run the diagnostics again." Jerome looked skeptical. "Maya, that's a $250,000 car. If we damage it moving it around, We won't damage it, Dad. We're mechanics, remember? We know how to move cars safely. Besides, if I'm wrong, we'll just move it back and nobody will be any the wiser." Together, they carefully drove the Bentley from Bay 7 to Bay 3, which was on the opposite side of the garage from the industrial battery charger. Maya reconnected her laptop and began running the same diagnostic routines she had performed earlier. The difference was immediately apparent. The communication delays that had been causing the cascade of system failures were completely gone. Data flowed smoothly between modules, acknowledgement signals arrived on time, and all the mysterious electrical problems that had plagued the car for weeks simply disappeared. "I can't believe it," Jerome said, staring at Maya's screen in amazement. 3 weeks of troubleshooting, and the problem was the bay, not the car. Maya was grinning with satisfaction and relief. Her theory had been correct, and they had solved a problem that had been mystifying experienced mechanics for weeks. But her excitement was tempered by the realization of what this discovery meant for the shop's operations. "Dad, we need to do something about that battery charger. It's going to keep causing problems with any modern luxury car that gets parked near it." Jerome nodded, but his expression was troubled. You're absolutely right, but that charger costs the shop a lot of money. Mr. Sterling isn't going to want to hear that his expensive new equipment is causing more problems than it solves. Maybe we can find a solution that doesn't involve removing the charger entirely. There might be ways to shield it or relocate it so it doesn't interfere with the diagnostic bays. Maya spent the next hour researching electromagnetic shielding techniques on her laptop while her father performed final tests on the Bentley to confirm that all systems were functioning normally. The car that had been a source of frustration and confusion for weeks was now running perfectly, all of its sophisticated systems working in harmony. You know what amazes me most about this? Jerome said as he closed the Bentley's hood. It's not just that you figured out the problem. It's that you approached it completely differently than I would have. I was so focused on finding what was broken that I never considered that something external might be causing the breakage. Maya felt a surge of pride at her father's words. I learned from watching you, Dad. You always taught me to understand systems as a whole, not just individual parts. I just applied that thinking to electronic systems instead of mechanical ones. You did more than that. You thought about the problem in a way that someone from my generation might never have considered. These new cars require new ways of thinking, and you're already